Hello folks. Well, this video was produced after a fellow made a comment on my last aerofly video about hovering jets. Well, he asked if there were any jets that could hover on aerofly. Again, I said there was not a lot of jets that can hover vertically in real life. In fact, I know of none. And he said, oh yes there are. There were many that were designed to. I said hovering jets are really not practical, but there were a couple on aerofly that could actually hover vertically. So he asked me to make a video to prove it. So I'm going to try to prove the best that I can, but don't hold your breath. Jets are not supposed to hover vertically. I mean, why would you? You know, your gas mileage is terrible. So I'm going to explain why it's pretty and much an art to hover a jet vertically if you can do it at all. First of all, unlike a plane, it doesn't have a propeller in the front blowing wind over the control surfaces. But a jet doesn't have any of that, because its thrust is right at the very tail and doesn't blow over any of the control surfaces, where a nose-propellered airplane does. You know, pusher-prop planes also have the same problem. The control surface do not do anything and are very sluggish till you pick up speed, especially in hand launch. But you need a strong arm. Well, with the autopilot on, it didn't have enough control deflection. And once I turned it off, I had full control deflection, so I was able to launch this big, heavy 7-foot wingspan plane successfully. And first of all, you need enough power to hover. So putting a jet into a vertical hover, all controls become moot and don't work. The only thing that you have that you can actually control is the thrust. So trying to hover aerofly jets is very difficult and virtually impossible, just like the real ones, since the flight physics engine in the program simulates real-life flying physics. And, you know, if you just look at it, it's simple logic. Well, and of course, you know, you've got the high alpha. This is where the nose is high. But when you're flying like that, you know, you have wind over the controls. They're kind of sloppy, but that's why there's a limit. Don't want to get too high. Well, the slower you go, the less wind over the control surface, and thus the airplane becomes very slow to control. And of course, when you stop in a vertical hover, there is no control except the thrust. And here's a few of the jets that I've tried to vertically hover, but the results are always the same. You can't roll. You can't do anything. And since airplanes are designed to be nose heavy, they fall usually forward into a stall. Don't fear, because there are two that will hover. Keep watching, because I'm going to show you those in a minute. You know, the jets that are designed to hover, like the Harrier or the F-35 or some of these other jets, they cannot hover vertically. And here I've got a Harrier, and I'm going to try that, and I cannot get it to hover vertically. Even though it has the power, the control surfaces don't work when you're stopped vertically like that. Trying to hover a jet vertically like that, especially with no vectored thrust, is like trying to balance a pencil on your fingertip with the top of it nose heavy. The only thing you have to control it is the thrust at the very bottom. And even with vectored thrust, you're only having a tiny amount of movement there, not a lot to hold it, especially if it starts to fall completely over. Well, there actually are two jets on aerofly that can sort of vertically hover. It's because I can set them to fly with more control and vectored thrust. And they are the F-16 Viper, General Dynamics, and the MiG-29 Russian aircraft. Both have vectored thrust, vectored engines, and even though there's thrust vectoring, this is very difficult to do. I have a radio-controlled F-16. Quite a few of them I've had over the years, and I have a lot of experience with it. And believe me, I would never try to hover. And here you're seeing some of the other jets that I've had over the years. I've got quite a bit of experience at it. I've never been able to get them to hover vertically. They might stop in the air for a few seconds, but with no wind over the control surfaces, nada. But here, with vectored thrust, you want to cry, so let's go. You know, even with vectored thrust, this is really hard to do. I mean, it's a fine line. You know, those nozzles don't move all the way over or anything. You got no wind on the elevators or ailerons. The rudder doesn't do anything. There's no air over them. So it's a little difficult. Well, the folks doing all that hovering with their airplanes usually move their CG forward to make a more tail-heavy airplane, and definitely not what you want to do in full-scale flying. Also, these models don't have nozzles that move that far, so once you pass the limit, the plane's going to fall into a stall. Well, I'm not sure there's an art to doing this, but I'm sure if you got the right equipment, I mean, you know. Somebody probably always put 12 gyros in with the nozzles that move 45 degrees and made it tail heavy so they could do it all automatically. You know, flying helicopters has really helped me, and especially learning to fly this stuff on aerofly where I don't break anything. And of course, pinching the sticks really helps with fine control on the sticks. There is a torque roll trainer actually built into the program for the airplanes that you want to practice and learn how to do torque rolls and hovering. Okay, let's try to fly that MiG-29. It has 2 engines on it and vectored thrust. Let's see how that one does. By the way, I love to be able to adjust the smoke on these things. I've got the knob on the transmitter, channel 7, so I can adjust the smoke. So that way you can either put it on wide open or just a little bit. Here you're seeing the vectored thrust of the engines. Well, this MiG is really much harder to fly and to especially hover. Vectored thrust nozzles are not. I have no expo set because that's on all the time. So I prefer using dual rate switches to turn down the movement here. And of course with the vectored thrust, it's really easy to get into a flat spin. Something else they told us to never practice in the Phantom. So this is what can happen. So there you have it, folks. That's why you don't see too many people hovering any jets vertically. I don't normally recommend it, but there are a couple that if you've got some good finesse with your fingers, you can hover on aerofly. So thanks a lot for watching, folks. We'll see you next time. This is Dave the Night Flyer, signing off for now.